Salutations, every pup, and welcome to Chapter 8 of The Boy Who Kept Dying by NinjaPandaScholar. As always, the link to the fic will be in the description below. And with that out of the way, let's jump on into it. Chapter 8, wherein Death experiences a panic attack. I didn't put my name in the bloody cup! Harry exclaimed as soon as Death appeared on Harry's bed the night after the Triwizard Tournament champions were selected. Of course you didn't, Death responded, confused. Who in Hecate's name thought you did? Everyone! Harry exclaimed, completely frustrated. Ron, Dumbledore, Snape, everyone! They're idiots, and I'll haunt their nightmares if you ask me to, Death said, ominously, and obviously more than serious. It was a simple decision. If Harry asked, he'd be more than happy to cause the worst nightmares any of them had ever experienced. Harry ignored him as he leaned against the headboard. I just won't compete. That's right. They can't make me. Maybe I can transfer to a different school. Death hissed, remembering the Triwizard tournaments of the past. He'd been very involved, which meant nothing good for his Harry. You'll die. It's the idiotic contract. He seethed. Death had been keeping an eye on the school, since Harry first stepped off the train in first year, really, especially when they announced the tournament was taking place there. Just one other thing to bring Death to the school in an official capacity. It didn't shock Death that somehow Harry found himself having to compete. It was just the way things were with the boy that seemed to attract danger. Wouldn't be too bad, Harry grumbled petulantly. We're not talking about this again, Death sighed and rolled his eyes. It was a reoccurring argument with them. You will compete, and you will do well. I'll help you and be in the audience for every task. Really? Harry asked, sitting up and looking at his friend in disbelief. You would actually come to the tasks? Like a normal human person? Of course, Death scoffed. I'll probably have to take some poor soul on anyway. It's just expedient to already be on hand. And I spent a long time coming up with this form. He motioned to the look he always wore around the mortals when he was trying to put them at ease. I might as well get some use out of it. That's the spirit, Harry made fun of him. Want to borrow my invisibility cloak? Just in case people decide to talk to you and it gets uncomfortable? Death rolled his eyes. First of all, I'm not completely inadept at social interaction. I talk to you all the time, anyway. Secondly, I'm Death. Why in the world would you think I'd need an invisibility cloak? It's a good cloak, Harry shrugged, but a little put out. I've never seen you around other people, and I've always been able to see you, so don't look at me like it was a stupid question. Besides, it's always you who says that people tend to scream and run rather than sit down for a nice chat. Death gave him a fond glare. I'll just hide in the back like I'm sure your godfather will be doing as well. I'll tone down my aura in case anyone sees me, but I don't plan on being there invisible. I can't really step in to influence things, but I would like to hopefully be a comforting presence for you. Feel free to scare any of the judges. I'm still a little sore about the whole competing thing. Maybe I'll bring Fluffy along with me, Death mused with a mischievous grin. Hagrid would love to see him again, Harry smiled. He might cause some panic, though. Not that I'm super against that. Death just shrugged. That had been the point. They might not have been some of his creatures, but Death felt for the dragons in the first task. He fully believed it was inhumane to transport nesting mothers to a new location just for a game. He checked, and Harry had a good plan with summoning his broom, but thus still made sure each dragon got a good look at him as a warning, and they seemed more subdued than normal after that. He almost stepped in to have words with Harry's friend Ron until he saw the young man apologizing to Harry after the task. Death always just felt just a little jealousy around Harry's other friends, but he was very happy he had them regardless. As Christmas neared, Death visited Harry a couple times, and both times, Harry seemed overly amped up or nervous. It was the second time, after Harry threw two hands in poker, which he was actually really good at, that Death had enough. Just tell me! He almost exploded in frustration. What is it? Harry jumped and looked at him. Um, he started nervously. You see, there's this bowl thing at Christmas. And you have to ask someone out. Death nodded in understanding, finally getting why Harry was so on edge. So, who's the lucky person? Well, I was. Harry seemed to get stuck halfway through. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. I was wondering if you'd come with me? Harry rushed out and then cracked open one eye to look at his friend questioningly. Death's jaw dropped open and he just stared at Harry. He did not see that one coming. I can't, Death finally breathed out. Not that I don't want to, he rushed to add, seeing the sad look on Harry's face. It's fine, Harry started. No, let me explain. Death jumped in. I look in my early 20s and you're only 14, he explained. I can't go with you. Besides, I really creep people out, for lack of a better term. You look good, not creepy, Harry said, turning a bright red. Death smirked, his dark eyes crinkling happily at the corners. I may look normal, but I don't feel normal to people, Death explained once again. My presence upsets, well, everyone besides you. Even the dragons in the first task were frightened. Harry gave it some thought, but he didn't seem happy about it. Death wasn't sure what was going on, but something seemed to be changing in their relationship that he just didn't understand. Bloody human emotions. Maybe he'd discuss it with Lily later. She might be able to explain it to him. He just didn't understand mortals at all. Harry behaved admirably in the second task. Death thought he looked on the wet young man. Death thought as he looked on the wet young man in pride from where he was hiding behind the stands. Death knew Harry would make sure all the hostages were safe, even if it was just a game. There was just too much at stake. He had been very worried for his friend, though when he took longer than expected to surface. Death had made sure to give the little house elf the gillyweed Harry would need for the task. The elf had been planning to steal it from Snape's stores, but Death didn't want the elf or Harry to get in trouble with that git of a potions master. He felt bad for terrifying the little elf, but he'd been happy to help his master Harry Potter, sir, in the end. Just one last task to go, Death reminded himself as he watched Harry laughing with his friends. They were almost at the end. Death never did bring Fluffy to the school, but he did have words with Barty Crouch after he died. He wasn't one of the main ones on Death's "You Hurt Harry" list, but he'd have to do as the first one he was able to actually yell at, besides Quirrell, who'd been receiving all of his negative attention so far. It was a little cathartic, but still frustrating. Death waved from beside the stands at Harry as he got ready for the third task. Harry happily waved back to the shadowed spot Death was standing in to avoid the humans. Death smiled broadly at his friend. He had finally talked to Lily about what she thought was going on with him and Harry, but it hadn't cleared anything up for him. Actually, he was more confused now than ever. She'd just patted him on the hand and said he'd figure it out for himself, probably in a year or two. He had no clue what that meant. He really should stop hanging out with humans so much, he scoffed. It didn't take long before Death knew something was very wrong. He was being summoned. He appeared in a graveyard beside the Hufflepuff champion, Cedric Diggory, Death remembered. Harry stared right at him from where he was secured to a headstone and looking injured and traumatized. Death looked at him sadly as Harry just gave him a small, sad smile back. Death couldn't do anything to help his friend, and Harry knew that he was the only one who saw Death when he was fulfilling his duties. It pained him, but he wasn't of this world, so he shouldn't interact with it. He didn't leave with Cedric just yet though. He would stay and wait and hopefully only leave with one soul. Death felt like he was having a panic attack. He'd never experienced one before, didn't even know he could have one being an immortal deity, but here he was. The abomination was back. His Harry was in danger, yet again, and he could only watch. He watched the minions show up. He refused to call them Death Eaters. So disrespectful. Then he suffered through the duel. When the echoes of the abomination's victims returned with priori incantatem, Death looked on in awe at the power and maturity of his Harry. Lily and James both glanced over at Death before they disappeared, and Harry grabbed Cedric's body and the portkey to rush to safety. Death welcomed the kind boy's spirit, and they had a nice chat of in a lounge of Singapore's Changi Airport, Death's current waiting room. Cedric was understandably terrified of Harry's friend and upset about dying, but he treated Death kindly and asked him to pass along to Harry that he didn't blame him for what happened. Death appreciated Cedric's thoughtfulness and introduced him to James and Lily once he ushered him on to the next realm. They would look out for him and get him settled. That night, Death held Harry as he cried himself to sleep. They didn't talk or play games or anything. Death just held him and told him what Cedric said and told him his parents were so proud of him. And that's a wrap on Chapter 8. I hope you all enjoyed! 4th year, done in a flash. I think the chapters are gonna get longer. I think. Maybe. Who knows? But I do still love the chapters. I don't know. It's something about their short delivery style that appeals to me, because even though it's short, it's so sweet. It's all like the best moments of every year, and like no filler at all, which is great. I know a lot of you are complaining about the length, and I am sorry about that, but I don't know how long a chapter is going to take before I read it. And also, reading short chapters is kind of nice. It's like a little break, especially after my the one they call broccoli fic, where almost every chapter was 40 minutes to an hour. And that was a lot. Anyway, I I like this fic a lot, a lot, and I hope you all like it too. Chapter 9 will be tomorrow. Please go show the original author Ninja Panda Scholar some love. Please leave me a comment. I love reading comments. They make me so happy. Please leave me specifically hate comments, and I'll shout you out in the next video. That being said, shout outs to Dazai and Iyuki 5434. Thank you for your hate comments. That name was fun to say. Anyway, I will see you all next time. I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye, pups!